Welcome to Take a Timeout with Dustin Sullivan, a production of the Can Do Group. The Can Do Group is a 501c3 nonprofit provider of services for adults with developmental disabilities and is pleased to bring you this podcast. Today, Dustin's guest is veteran football coach Jerry Cooper. Coach Cooper has been the head coach at several local high schools, including Lucas, Waynesfield, Goshen, Hicksville, Bath, Columbus Grove, Lima Central Catholic, Seymour, that's in Tennessee, Shawnee, and next year will be coaching the Hardin Northern Polar Bears in Dola. Coach Cooper has 274 wins as a football head coach. One of those wins is a state championship with Columbus Grove in 2003. Also that year, he was the head coach of the Columbus Grove track team, which also won a state championship the year before. Sounds like a lot of talented athletes.
Hard work.
So, okay, well, Dustin,
Okay.
let's get started.
Where did you grow up?
I'm in Morrow County here in Ohio. If you go to Columbus, go about 40 miles north of there, Morrow County. And Dustin, I'm the youngest of 10 kids.
That's a lot of kids.
So I grew up on a mid-sized farm. And so I think that's where you learn that ability to get along with people. And as you're growing up, when you got 9 older brothers and sisters, you better get along, especially being the youngest one, or you might get beat up.
Yeah.
I'm the baby of 6, so I can imagine.
I don't mean to be rude, but how old are you? I was just curious.
I'm going to be 64. I was 63 on my last birthday.
You look good for 64.
Well, thanks, Dustin. I appreciate that.
You play any sports growing up?
I did. In fact, I was a 3-sport person. I played all 3. I played football, basketball, and baseball. And I actually went to college to play football. I went to Otterbein College and was going to play small college football. And I hurt my knee, and that was kind of one of the events that changed my life a little bit. The guy that I had played high school football for, a guy named Paul Brimingen, invited me to coach at the high school level the first year I was out of school. And once I got that taste of coaching those guys, I realized right then I was going to be a head football coach.
That's
someday.
cool. That's a good university where you went.
Yep, Otterbein. Hey, it's right there in Columbus on the north edge. It's in Westerville, and it's small enough school that I could get to know most of the student body, but it was close enough to all the things that were going on. I had a great experience there.
Oh, well, there's that question.
Did you ever play any sports in college? Intramural sports and regular sports?
I played a lot of that intramural stuff. In fact, one of the things I did after I coached is I actually got engaged in playing a lot of men's softball. And I played on a couple really good men's softball teams. At one time, I was playing about 150 plus games a year in the summers. But then, that was kind of my year-round thing. I coached football in the fall. We did weightlifting in the winter. Then I coached track in the spring. Then I spent my summers playing men's softball.
That's sweet. Have you heard of a sport called broomball?
Yep, I've seen that too.
He likes to talk about that because I've told him about it because I've played it.
Dustin, the one I picked up as I've gotten older, I've been playing a little bit of pickleball.
That's fun.
And it's really fun. The court shrunk down, and us old guys that can't move around so well, it still allows you to compete and stay active, and I enjoy doing that a little bit.
Gives you something to do. Where did you get your enthusiasm? And is it just for football or other areas of your life?
I'd like to think I'm pretty enthusiastic, and I tell people it's kind of there was a passion that was planted real early. Being the youngest of 10, we always competed, and we competed in everything. We competed in the games we played, and cards, and anything, and that competitive spirit, I think, was fostered at that point in my life, and it's kind of carried over. And I think the enthusiasm for football and for coaching, once I got to taste that, I just realized that, the ability to be able to impact young people, and how can you ask them to be excited if you're not truly excited yourself? So I've made it a mission of my own to make sure I bring a lot of energy and enthusiasm to the coaching.
That's what I like about coaching. It's good to be competitive.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Who inspired you to be the person you are today, on and off the field?
Oh, I think there's a lot of factors that have been inspirational. You know, first off, I consider myself to be a religious person, so I'm inspired by my faith. I'm also inspired by those people that taught me. You know, I had 3 great coaches when I was in high school, and they're all still living. Dale Brown was my basketball coach. He's a longtime administrator at Brookville and on the Southwest District Board. And then Dale Kramer, and then Paul Bremingen, I mentioned him earlier, was my football coach. And those guys were great coaches and did a great job. And I think the mentorship that they provided, it kind of gave you the foundation that, hey, high school athletics is exciting, enthusiastic, and I want to be a part of that.
Never mind. Okay, I'm just talking off camera. Thank you.
I'm having trouble like turning my head
That's
to
okay.
the right. Now I can see better. You scoot to the left some more. My head the other direction.
Oh, you mean you want me to go
Yeah,
this way?
because my head doesn't.
Well, he wants to be on camera though.
Oh.
Will you still
That's
be
okay,
on
it doesn't
camera?
matter.
I was having trouble turning my head.
Okay, we're
We're
good.
We're trying to accommodate Dustin. We don't have to worry about me.
Right here. Tell us.
Tell us more about
Coach
Coach
Bremigan?
Bremingen.
Yeah.
Tell us more about Coach Brenneman.
Hey, well, first off, he was one of those guys that he was a social studies teacher, and he had two real passions. He loved history, and then he also loved football. And from a very early age, it seemed like all the players who were missing a father, he kind of stepped in and was that father figure. And my dad had passed away when I was in 7th grade. So you know, Coach Bremingen became like that father figure, and he just went out of his way to look after all the players who were missing dads, and he was inspirational, but also, you know, demanding and tough, and had a great sense of passion and compassion. And I just realized at that point that I wanted to be a coach, and I wanted to be like Coach Brem.
Is he still around?
He has passed. His son is in coaching, and Paul was a football coach, but Paul Jr. was a basketball coach, and he's a longtime basketball coach at Russia, Ohio, and he had played in the state championship game a couple times, and he's probably won almost 500 basketball games.
Wow. Where's Russia?
If you go down to Shelby County, go down south of Lima a little bit, go past St. Mary's, down past Auglaize County. They play in the Shelby County League down there, just south off of 75.
Oh, do they play like Walpock?
They're a little bit farther south. Russia plays in the Shelby County League. That's a bunch of small schools. Bodkins and Fort Laramie.
I know where that's at.
That's
Fort Laramie, I know where that's
yeah.
at.
Yeah. So did Coach Bremigan inspire you to be a coach? Is that you think you took that direction because of him?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think I enjoyed being around him when I was a player, and then as I was going to college, he invited me to be on the football staff. So the 4 years I was in college, I was also assistant football coach. So in that 8-year span, I'd say he's probably the most influential person that drove me to say that I wanted to be a head football coach. And the important part of it was he taught us. He took the time to teach us. And he not only taught me how to be a good player, but he taught me how to be a good coach. And I think more importantly, he taught us how to treat kids right and be a good person.
Yeah, because sometimes you watch games, you're like, some of those coaches are not very respectful of their players.
Yeah,
sometimes upset you.
Yeah, some of those guys, some of those old school coaches, especially, those guys were kind of mean spirited, and but you know, times have changed, and I'd like to think that that's one of the things that allowed me to stay in coaching for a long. I've been able to adapt a little bit, and I tell people I think I'm open minded and forward thinking, but I have some old school roots, and you rely on those roots, but at the same time, I think I'm willing to change and adapt, and realize that kids now are different than they were 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
Yeah, you can't do what Bobby Knight used to do.
No, that's a good
That's
example.
horrible.
I have an interesting story about that. This Bremingen, he ran high school phys ed with a paddle. And
oh, really?
Back in the day. And if you were tardy, you got a whack. If you cussed during phys ed, you got a whack. We had to shower. If you tried to walk out of there without taking a shower, you got a whack. Well, think about that in today's society. I mean, he probably paddled 3 or 4 kids every class period of every day.
He was like that father figure with the
Oh yeah,
actual whacking too.
He had the hammer, but he was one of those guys. He was fair, and his thing was, hey, I'll be fair, but it was a strong discipline. But I think the kids around it respected that, and hey, it didn't matter if you come in late, you're the superintendent of school, son. You got a whack,
Wow.
and so I think that's where I learned maybe that sense of, it's okay to be disciplined, and even to be somewhat aggressive in that discipline, as long as you make sure that those players understand that you're fair and you really care about trying to teach them to do the right things.
Okay,
Their methods work.
Yeah, it got our attention, I can tell you that.
I don't see a question about this, but I kind of want to lead into this with all your coaching career. What high school did you start at?
The very first high school coaching job was at Lucas.
Okay.
One of my brothers lived in the town of Lucas, and they had dropped football in 1983. They didn't pass a school levy. They dropped football. Well, they're getting ready to start the football program back up in 1984, but their coach wasn't going to come back, and they didn't have a lot of funding, so they didn't necessarily have a teaching position available. Well, I had a business degree, and I was actually managing a convenience store, one of those speedways or gas towns. So I didn't have to have a teaching job. So I took the athletic director's and head football position and kept my job at the gas station.
That's
Worked
awesome.
nights at the gas station, then worked all day long at the school, and took the head football coaching job. And it was interesting because they had dropped football the year before, but a lot of our kids had played at Loudonville High School, who had a really good team, because when you drop the program, the kids are allowed to go to neighboring schools to play.
That's cool.
So that they had played, but then we brought them all back together, and we won the first 9 games I coached as a high school coach.
Oh my gosh.
And even after not having, but it's because we had a ton of good players, and those guys were willing to coach, willing to be coached, and were
They
hungry.
were just happy to have a football team.
Yeah, and to be honest with you,
Their
that was a
own.
part of it too.
Yeah.
And then we had a phenomenal leader at quarterback, and a kid who was literally all state in football and basketball. Went on to play some college basketball at Malone, and so there were lots of good things about that program. But that was my first head coaching experience.
What was his name?
The player, Andy Booth.
I've heard of him.
Andy could have played football. He could have played basketball. He could have played whatever sport he wanted. In fact, we went with him. Ohio State was recruiting him to play football. We go down to the Ohio State recruiting visit. He writes down all the athletic things he's done.
Yeah.
And those guys, at the end of the day, they say, well, Andy, we're not sure we're going to offer you a football scholarship, but the swim coach wants to see you. We go over to the swim, and the swim coach says, is this time right for this 100-meter butterfly or whatever it was? And then he said, yeah, I can swim that. He said, you got a pair of swim trunks? He said, nope. He said, I'll find you a pair. Go in, buy him a pair of swim trunks, put him in the pool, watch him swim. He gets out. They offer him a swim scholarship to go to Ohio State. He wasn't going to get a football scholarship, and he didn't want to swim, but he was just a long, tall, athletic kid and was a great athlete. And literally, he could have swam at Ohio State, but he chose to he went to Malone and played basketball. But that was just the kind of athlete he was.
Yeah.
He was a good basketball player, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was a great basketball player. He probably averaged about 25 points a game in high school.
Oh wow.
Talk about some of your players that went on to succeed after high school, both on and off the field.
An
Ty-
example was Tyler O'Connor at Michigan State.
Yeah. Well, I've had a lot of players play college football, and I've had a ton of players that went on into coaching. In fact, I had one particular class, the graduating class of 2000 at Bath. There were 5 or 6 members of that team that went on and are currently coaching or are coaches. And a couple of those guys are coaching at Liberty Benton here in Findlay. Scott Arnold and Bryant Miller, those guys played on the same
Heard
high
of
school
them.
team. And one of their classmates, Greg Wolf, is coaching at Taylor University, and Tim Sealshot coached with me at Lima Central Catholic. So there's been a lot of kids that have gone on and played. Unfortunately, I think I've only had a couple players drafted to try to play in the NFL. We had a long snapper, a kid that snapped for extra points and field goals, that played at Bowling Green. His name was Diepenbrock. And he got drafted or got signed to play at Buffalo and made a couple, a real short stint in the NFL.
I think I remember him.
And then Tyler O'Connor played quarterback at Michigan State, and he tried to play in the NFL, but that didn't last too long either.
He was a tough quarterback for Michigan State, I mean.
Yep. In fact, Tyler O'Connor told me one time he only started 11 games at Michigan State. But in those 11 games, he beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame, he beat Ohio State at Ohio State, and he beat Michigan at Michigan. He was the starting quarterback and beat all three of those big-time programs in their own stadium. So he had, and he was there for 5 years and networked with all the people at Michigan State, and they love him, and he did a great job. And even though as a senior he was a starting quarterback, their team wasn't doing very well. Well, they decided to go with a younger quarterback because they're building for the future. And he graciously stepped aside and was a good person. And those kind of quarterbacks, those kind of people, they come along once in a lifetime.
He's the one that got them down there and kicked that game-winning field goal.
Yeah, remember the Michigan State kicker running around and doing the windmill after he made the winning field goal? Tyler was the quarterback of that game, right?
That was the next year after Ohio State won the championship.
Yeah.
The year before.
Yep, that's exactly right.
I remember that. I always remember that.
Well, Dustin, you got a pretty good memory if you can remember all that stuff.
He does.
He was a good quarterback. I enjoyed watching him play.
Yeah, it was interesting. He wasn't actually the starting quarterback that season, but Connor Cook was the quarterback. He had gotten hurt, and so Tyler got to play because Cook was a couple years older than him, and he was his backup. And then he got to play in that game.
Because that year they got to the playoffs.
Yeah,
and they got destroyed.
They don't want to talk about that. Alabama beat them like 37-0 in the playoff game, and it was 37-0, but it wasn't even that close.
At least they got there.
Yeah, they did.
They got there.
Great university.
Dustin has a great memory. I don't have a good memory because I forgot to share the fact of the day for the podcast. Ohio High School Athletic Association adopted a new range of numbers starting in 2022. The range of acceptable numbers was expanded from 1 to 99 to 0 to 99. So last year was the first time you were able to see the number 0 playing a sport. So, interesting.
Pretty cool.
I don't want those players that are 0. I want those players that are 100%.
Yeah. Number 7 is probably my favorite number.
And for whatever reason, you watch the NBA or you watch a lot of sports, and those players, especially college, they like that 0, so they were just about forced to do that, to add that 0.
It's funny because my son's played travel soccer, and for all his career he was able to be number 10, and when 10 was already taken on the team, he went to 00, so he was out there playing in travel soccer as 00 because he couldn't have 10, so he took 00. So
there was 2 basketball players that were good that had 0. Jarrett Solinger and Gilbert Arenas.
Both those guys were 0 or 00?
I think they were 0.
0, yeah.
0.
There was a basketball player for Ohio State that wore 0. Solinger and somebody else.
Really? I know.
One of them wore 00.
Okay, so we'll go on to number 7.
Which one are we doing?
Number 7 right here. You're known.
You are known for coaching football. What else have you coached?
Well, I always did track, and then, believe it or not, a lot of the years, I always felt like there was a good correlation between basketball and the skills you learn in basketball. So for quite a few years, I did varsity football, and then I either did 7th or 8th grade or freshman basketball just to stay engaged with the kids, and then I always did track. In fact, I was a head track coach for 27 years.
Wow.
And so like a lot of the places I was at, I was also the head football and head track coach. And there was just so many things that cross over between football and track. And then that allowed those students to be in a year-round training cycle. Football in the fall, weightlifting in the winter, track in the spring, back to summer football.
You know, the good thing about track is it helps your football players get better at running and ups their strength.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I like the jumps. And those things that you do athletically, the 3 jumping, the jumping events, the high jump, long jump, and pole vault. Go watch a track meet. Some of the best athletes are in those jumps, especially that pole vault.
You always freak out when your players try to jump up in the air. I'm like, don't do that. Be careful.
Yeah, you don't
Makes
want
you
them jumping
nervous.
too much in football, but the athleticism behind is what you try to develop.
It's the timing.
I think you just shared your secret training program for your football players because you have them football, then
Yep,
weightlifting, then
we try to
track,
make it a year-round,
and then summer
training
football.
cycle.
You just shared your secret.
But, one of the things that I think I've always done is I recognize that even if kids aren't playing the sport that you're coaching, just playing sports and staying busy, there's a lot of things those guys can learn from playing basketball or playing, and even our good baseball kids. And, you teach kids to be competitive and to work on their physical skills and their athleticism. It carries over into so many other areas. So
it does.
I've never been discouraged if a kid comes to me and says, well, Coach, I want to try this sport or do this. As long as you're playing a sport and working on being a better athlete, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
That leads into that question.
What do you like best about coaching?
I think the thing I like the most is the relationship that you develop with your players. Hey, the games are fun, and the memories that you make, those last for a lifetime. But what's really important is the relationships that you develop with those players. And I've coached so many players, and now as I've gotten older, I'm starting to get some of their kids are coming back, or their kid. I'm watching their kids play or playing against their young people, and it's always the relationship though. That's been number one for me always.
Makes you feel good when your former players came a long way and get to do all these amazing things in life.
Yep, and the thing I enjoy most is when those players now, 20 or 25 years after you coach them, they come up and thank you and say, Coach, I know you were hard on me and I didn't always appreciate all the things you were doing back then, but now I have a way better appreciation for what you're doing.
You did it because you loved them and you wanted to help your players.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, sometimes you have to make some tough choices in that coaching, because sometimes there's only one ball or there's only one quarterback, and you got to tell somebody who wants to play quarterback, well, you can't play quarterback, or you have to make tough decisions. But I always tell those people they're all rooted in what's best for the team and what's best for the group, and then ultimately you try to make that young person, put them in the best position to experience success and grow professionally and personally. And I like to think that I've done that over time.
Because when you're coaching, your goal is to win. Sometimes you don't win, but that's not what matters.
Yeah.
It's having fun.
You know what, Dustin, you hit it exactly on the head. Winning is a goal, but the ultimate goal is to teach those players to be winners, not just winning games. It's teach them how to be winners, and winners in life and winners in personality and in the things they do. And so,
I just want to ask that question.
What is your most memorable game you've coached?
man, there's been a lot of them. There's been a lot of fun games of time. Probably the state championship game. We had been so close to winning a state title. We'd lost twice in a row in the state semifinals in football. And it's like that whole community at Columbus Grove was just dying to win a state football title. And every one of the players, every person in the community, I tell the story. During the broadcast, the guy tells that the population of Columbus Grove is 1,175 or whatever. And they sold 1,800 pre-sale tickets to the state championship game. And and that game, probably the reason it's the most memorable is because it's been the most enduring of the games. It's the most lasting game. People bring it up all the time and talk about. And the guy who's the head coach at Marion Local, Tim Goodwin, they've won the state title 12 or 13 times. Well, one of the few times that they didn't win the state championship is when Columbus Grove beat them in the championship game.
We've had a couple of great coaches around Ohio over the years. Mark Ritzler was a good coach.
There's a ton of good coaches. You think about this, Dustin. There's almost 800 schools in the state that play high school football. And there's some really great coaches. There's a ton of great coaches out there that never make a deep playoff run but they're out there every day and year after year doing a great job of coaching and leading young people. And I could start now and go forever talking about all the good coaches that there are in the state of Ohio.
We're talking about the state of Ohio, but this question leads into this next one for Dustin. What took you down to Tennessee?
Yeah.
Well, actually, what took me to Tennessee was the state of Ohio changed the retirement rules. So where I was at is if you didn't retire by June 1st of 2015, you would have to have gone to either 60 or 65 till you could retire. Well, I had enough years in, but I was a long ways away. So if I didn't retire before that date, then it was going to change. So I told my wife, I said, I'll just retire and we'll find a job someplace, and then you can quit teaching. And so she was kind of up for that. And so I retired from here in the state of Ohio, and I wanted to go out of state. And so we tried in that Gatlinburg Pigeon Forge. We had vacationed around Norris Lake and that area, and we liked that area of the country. So we retired, and I found a football job, found somebody that would hire me down there.
That's cool. I like that. See, there's a lot of wineries and breweries and a lot of cool stuff. A lot of fun stuff. It is a beautiful place to live.
And the thing we liked about Tennessee so much was you still had all 4 seasons of the year, but yet the winter was way diminished compared to here in Ohio. And there was only about 6 or 7 weeks of the year that you couldn't be outside. They opened the baseball season on President's Day. So they were outside playing baseball in February. And you know what weather's like in Ohio in February. And the falls were nice, and the weather was warmer. And I enjoyed it. And to be honest with you, if it had been strictly up to me, I'd probably still be in Tennessee. But
there's a lot to do there.
And it was fun. We were close enough. We could be in the mountains in about 30 minutes. But from where we lived, we also could be in downtown Knoxville. And I saw a bunch of University of Tennessee football games. And in fact, the head football coach at University of Tennessee, he gave every high school football coach 2 tickets to all the Tennessee Vols home games. And so when the SEC comes in there, you're watching Alabama or LSU or Georgia or Florida, and those were great games. I don't think I missed a game in the 4 years I was in Tennessee. I went to every Tennessee home football game.
They have a good coach. Chef Heupel's a really good guy.
Yeah, and they're hard on coaches, boy. If you're winning, you're on top of the world, but you lose a couple games, they're ready to get rid of you. But Heupel's done a great job.
Yeah, when they beat Alabama this year, that city went crazy.
And if they hadn't lost to South Carolina, they might have been in the playoffs.
I think they would have. They probably would have played Ohio State.
Well, Dustin, I'm impressed with what kind of sports fan you are.
I'm
a big Reds fan too.
Oh, I'm a Reds fan too, and I get so disappointed. Here's what I say: the Reds can hit, and the Guardians can pitch, but the Reds can't pitch, and the Guardians can't hit.
They've done pretty good this year,
but they're doing better, and the Reds are coming on. They're playing a little better of late.
Just don't have good ownership.
Yeah.
You revealed your professional baseball. What's your professional football team you like?
Yeah, who's your favorite professional football team?
I was asking you.
Let's hear. I want to hear what you have to say first.
I'm a Steelers fan.
Oh, there's a dagger.
Are you a Bengals fan?
I'm a Bengals fan.
I like them too.
And I probably chose the Bengals because my older brothers, they were huge Browns fans. But the Bengals didn't exist when they were growing. And I was such a big Reds, the Big Red Machine fan, that when they started football there, I became a Bengals fan. So I'm a Bengals fan.
I'm a fan of them too now because second favorite team because of Joe Burrow.
Man, talk about a class guy. Now that guy's done a great job.
The Bengals and Steelers rivalry has always been a fun rivalry over the years.
Well, the Steelers and the Browns, that's a pretty good rivalry too.
Yeah.
Seems like it's more Bengals Steelers these days.
Yeah, that's because the Bengals are a little better, but
yeah, the Bengals have always been relevant.
So, well, do you want to ask a fun question here?
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
oh man, that's pretty. I'd like to be able to know what people are thinking.
I think I would, but sometimes I don't think I would.
Yeah, maybe that's not a good thing, especially on Friday night when you make a bad call. Some of those players, some of those coaches, they may not be thinking good thoughts about you.
Okay, here's another good one. I like this one.
If a genie granted you 3 wishes, what would they be?
Man, I think one of them might be to live forever.
I wish that'd be a cool one.
You know, that's kind of a loaded question. My wife she'd have other things she'd want me to wish for, but to be honest with you, I've enjoyed. I really think I'm one of those people. I enjoy life the way it is right now, and I just want to. That's why I'm still coaching, because I can't find anything else that I'd rather be doing. And so, it's something I've been passionate about, and I just think I still want to share that with as many young guys as I can. I don't know how much longer I'm going to coach, but I know this. I know how I'm going to coach.
Enjoy it while you can.
Exactly.
Look at Bill Belichick. He's still coaching.
Yeah. I wish I was half as good a coach as him.
I wish everyone was as good as him.
So you went down to Tennessee for 4 years. What brought you back to Ohio?
Believe it or not, my wife's parents were getting older and
Okay.
fading, and they needed a little bit of help.
Yeah.
My wife grew up in East Allen County, and her dad was a superintendent at Allen East.
Okay.
And he had retired. They farmed out there. And then when we went to Tennessee, we built a real nice house with a complete granny suite and basically a whole house on the side for them, thinking we could get them to move to Tennessee with us. But
They weren't.
eventually they weren't going to come down there. And like Grandpa said, hey, I've lived on the same farm for 63 years. I'm not moving and spending the last 5 or 10 years of my life away from what's my home. And so once we figured out they weren't coming to Tennessee, then when they started fading in health, we came back. My wife wanted to be around them, take care of them for as long as she
And
could.
you couldn't help yourself. You had to you were retired, but you had to go back into coaching.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, when I retired and was rehired at Seymour, and just as we were ready to come back, Shawnee football job had opened up, and Shawnee actually had offered me the head football coaching job at least 2 times before when I was at Lima Central Catholic, and it didn't work for me then, but it worked okay then, so I decided to do that.
Right.
Shawnee's a nice little town.
It's a nice community,
Yeah.
and I think that about every place I've been. Every place has its ups and downs and positives, and I try to forget about those things that are not on the positive. Focus all my energies on what's positive.
Just do what you have to do.
Yeah, be as positive as you can.
Yeah.
What I like to do, Dustin, to be honest with you, I like to try to influence people to see things the same way I do, and I try to look at things really positively. Try and get the players and the parents and the community to look at things from the same positive perspective that I do.
That's kind of how I am a little bit. That same way.
You need an assistant coaching job?
No, not like coaching and life in general.
Yeah, that's a great plan, man.
He's trying to give you a job.
Try to give you a job.
You can sit on the sidelines and help out.
I don't think I want to be a coach because that responsibility.
Yeah.
He'd be a good inspiration to the players, though, for sure.
Yeah, I would be an inspirational.
Well, good. I'm going to get your card and stuff here today, and some point during the season, I'm going to have you come talk to our players
That'd be cool.
about being positive and looking at the good things in life.
That'd be awesome.
That would
Cool.
be good.
Experience a time on a football field.
Bringing it back to the area, since we're talking about your players, the trivia question. Let's see if you can answer it. There is a big wind farm in Dunkirk-Dola area. What's the name of the wind farm?
Boy, to be honest with you, I do not.
And how many windmills are there?
I know there's a bunch. I drive by them every day on my way to Hardin. Hey, I do know this. I did a little research. I know that the school gets about $300,000 a year
Oh, wow.
from the windmill
That's
stuff.
nice. That's nice.
And that was an estimate, so don't hold me to that number. But,
yeah.
But people don't realize, that is it. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff out there to try to get to that green energy and all those things, and then the bonus is, the school gets some kickback from that.
Right.
So it's pretty neat.
Do you know the name of the project?
Is it Sayota Wind Farm?
Nope, it's Hog Creek Wind Project.
Man.
And there are how many windmills?
How many are there?
You know the answer.
There's 30.
30 in
30
just
windmills.
Yeah.
in just that portion
And just
of
that Hog Creek
Creek
Wind,
Coach, yeah.
Wind Project, yeah.
It's a fun thing to do these interviews and all these coaches and stuff and get their perspective of stuff. And
We
their
got
experience.
off the windmills real quick there.
No, and I live in Allen County, and there are no windmills in Allen County. But you go to the next county, you go over to Van Wert County, and as you approach the Indiana line, all kind of windmills are there in
yeah.
Van Wert and Paulding County.
Oh, yes.
But then you cross the state line in Indiana, and they come to a dead stop. There's
Yep.
none.
Yep.
And I can't imagine that they couldn't put those there and create energy. They just have elected not to, and I appreciate the communities that have done that, you know.
Yeah.
It's good. It's awesome what the community do.
Yeah.
We're going into a long question here. I'm going to read the first part of it, and then he's
Okay.
going to read the last part of it. On the list of most coaching wins in Ohio, 3 in the top 40 have coached at Hardin Northern at some point. Skip Bowman with 284 wins. Most were at St. Mary's. Pete, is it Bruno? Bruno had 260 wins, and now you with 273 wins.
What is special about Hardin Northern's football program?
Well, I think she just touched on it. There's tradition there, you know, and you could go back to Skip when he coached there, and then Pete did a great job for a long period of time. And there's just something about those small communities when they get that football tradition, kind of get it in their blood, and then it becomes next generation and next generation after that. It's a real sense of community pride, and that equates to the kids being invested, and I just enjoy being a part of that. And I can tell you, those other 2 guys on that list with all those wins, those guys are way better coaches than me, but those guys have really had a ton of success and done a great job. And Skip Bachman was basically a trendsetter. He changed how football was played in Northwest Ohio. He ran that strict wing tee, and every Western Buckeye League school was trying to catch up to him. And Pete did a great job for a long period of time in the Blanchard Valley Conference and Hardin Northern. And, you know, probably at one of the smallest schools in the league, but one of the most hard-nosed, tough-minded football programs in the league. So, you know, give those guys a ton of credit.
There was a coach at Liberty Benton that won all these titles. That was really good.
Coach Nichols?
Yeah.
You realize he's going to coach for us, don't you?
He is. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, that was part of the deal when they called and asked me if I wanted to be the coach. They said we have a couple pretty good assistant coaches lined up, and Tim Nichols is a Hardin Northern grad, and he had agreed that he would coach, but he didn't want to be the head coach.
He was Aaron Kraft's coach, I think.
Yeah. That was a pretty good football player too, and a pretty good basketball player.
Not a great shooter, but good enough.
Yeah. I think we're down to the final question.
Yeah.
The most famous final question.
Do you consider a hot dog a sandwich?
I don't eat hot dogs. I hate to tell you that. I have a bad story about hot dogs, Dustin. When I was young, my dad took me to the place where we had our cows butchered, and I watched what they put in hot dogs. I watched all the stuff that went in hot dogs, and from that day on, I haven't eaten very many hot dogs. Now I'll eat a hot dog, but when I do, you have to smother it with relish and mustard and brown mustard, spicy mustard, ketchup, anything else, onions, anything you can put on there, so that I can't taste the hot dog.
Maybe a little skyline chili on top.
Hey, now that's a pretty good thing. I do that. My son, when I go to the Reds games, he always takes me over to northern Kentucky there, and we go to Covington, go to the original Skyline, one of the original Skyline chilies there.
Covington's a great area. Got the Hopper House and all the good places.
Yeah.
It's a great city.
When he's not knowledgeable about all the sports, he's a connoisseur of all the foods. You can ask him about almost any restaurant, and he knows about the restaurants too.
Well, that's one of the things on my bucket list. When I get done coaching, I want to go to all those major college football programs. I want to go to Alabama or the Grove in Auburn or at Mississippi or down on Toomer's Corner at Auburn. I want to go watch games.
That'd be some fun.
And then, you know, just enjoy the food, enjoy the game, and see what that's like.
I've always wanted to go to every baseball stadium.
That's a good thing too. Hey, I will tell you this. A friend of mine did one. You ever seen those baseball tours where they go like 8 or 9 games in like 7 days, and you literally get on a bus and they transport you to each one of those cities.
That's cool.
And there's a neat one that starts in Chicago. It goes Chicago, then it goes Milwaukee, and then over to Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, back to Cincinnati, St. Louis, and then it ends up back in Chicago where it started.
That's cool.
You should look into that.
Hey,
yeah.
We ought to go together because I'd love that.
Yeah. Baseball games are fun.
Well, I guess we should be wrapping this up.
Yeah.
It seems like it's been quite a while. So thank you for taking a time out with Dustin Sullivan today. It was nice getting to know you, and we hope everyone else enjoyed getting to know a little bit about you too.
It was a pleasure.
The pleasure's all mine, Dustin.
Thank you for joining today's podcast of Take a Timeout with Dustin Sullivan, a production of Can Do Group. This podcast is made possible by the support of local businesses and community members like you. Thank you. Want to be part of the action? You can help Can Do Group continue supporting adults with developmental disabilities by donating at www.candogroup.org.